Danley case was first made public, reports of pornographic pictures allegedly of Johnny and Dorothy Danley and their children shocked this community, and citizens in Montgomery were enraged by those reports and charges of alleged child molestation by the Danleys of their own kids. Attorneys Walter Chandler and Paul Cooper will conduct the appeal. Cooper says the state's obscenity laws are in question in the Danley case.
In regard to obscenity statutes, have laid out certain procedural due process requirements and safeguards before I can enter or seize obscene material. And some of our research has pointed out that the Supreme Court has dictated that a search warrant, number one, is necessary, and then a post-seizure hearing on whether the material seized is obscene should be made available to the defendants in this case. In this case, the statute under which they were indicted and also convicted did not provide for a search warrant which spells out with specificity what it is that is obscene. Secondly, it did not provide for a post-seizure hearing. Now, there are two other obscenity statutes on the books in the state of Alabama. They were passed during the same legislative session. They are Division I and Division II of the Alabama laws on obscenity. And both those divisions of the laws, those two separate statutes, provide for a mandatory search warrant, number one. Number two, a post-seizure hearing. The statute under which the Danleys were convicted does not provide for a search warrant, doesn't make it mandatory, and does not provide a post-seizure type hearing. In addition, the two other statutes which I referred to require some type of specific intent in the statute. This statute, part of it, some of the sections refer to an intent to disseminate, whereas a particular section under which the Danleys were convicted has no reference whatsoever to a specific intent to disseminate. Thirdly, we feel that this statute under which they were convicted relates more or less to a commercial type affair.
In Part 2 of this report, Danley attorney Walter Chandler says the defendant's constitutional rights may have been violated by a possible illegal seizure. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. Early this year, when Montgomery attorney Walter Chandler agreed to defend the Danleys on charges of child molestation, there were threatening phone calls to him and other comments about his decision to represent the couple. They were convicted. Now he's lead counsel in the appeal, and there are still some questions from the community.
The legal questions involved in the Danley case go to the very heart of two constitutional amendments, namely the First and the Fourth, which were important enough to the forefathers of this country who wrote the Constitution to place in the first position, the First Amendment that they wrote in the Constitution, that also enables the people that live under it to engage in free speech, freedom of religion. The Fourth Amendment rights, we're guaranteed the right to be free in our homes from unreasonable searches and seizures. The king's soldiers used to come into the homes in England anytime they wanted to, search for whatever they wanted to. That's one of the things that our forefathers said that the people in this country should be free from. And in the Danley case, not only was the Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment, not only were those two amendments touched on a little bit in an adverse fashion, they were legally trampled upon.
The State Court of Criminal Appeals is scheduled to hear the Danley appeal October 10th. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Students can look forward to paying 25 cents more for lunches this year. Previously, elementary lunches were 65 cents and junior and senior high lunches were 75 cents. But starting tomorrow, grade school students will pay 90 cents, and junior and senior high students will have to pay $1. Food Services Director Josephine Grissett says the increase is needed to cover budget cuts and raises.
We had to pay our employees 16% more than they were making last year. This was mandated by our state legislature. We received $1,000 in the past 2 years per employee from the state. They cut us by $200 each employee, and we had to pick up this amount plus the 16% increase.
Grissett says another reason for the increase is the high cost of food. She says parents and students may not like the increase, but wonders if they can pack a lunch at the same price her office can serve them each day. Grissett says those parents having difficulty paying their higher prices should get in touch with school officials to see if they're eligible for free or reduced lunches under the National School Lunch Program. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Summer Arts 80 will be an informal outdoor performance here on the green at Huntington College. Unlike more conventional programs of this type, tomorrow's 5 o'clock show is free to the public and promises to be an evening of fun for every member of the family. Local residents of all age groups have worked diligently for the past 2 weeks with professional dancers Delia Neal and Tom Condon. The husband and wife team are currently with the Memphis Ballet and will perform several classical selections in tomorrow night's show. Other segments will include local talent who will perform jazz pieces choreographed to music from the hit movie All That Jazz. The music segment should also appeal to every age group. Local music instructor Randy Foster's group Adequate will perform everything from Broadway show tunes to songs from Sesame Street. And then the audience will have an opportunity to get involved by singing along. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Rabies clinics like this one here at Carver High are being held at schools in every neighborhood to help encourage compliance by dog and cat owners. The clinics are being held from 2 to 6 p.m. The vaccination fee is $4 per animal and includes a certificate and dog tag for proof of vaccination.
We're having an increase in rabies in this area in the last year, and it's most important that everyone does turn out to one of these clinics and has their dogs immunized.
Are there any side effects for the dogs at all?
Most that will happen to be kind of like a person getting a tetanus shot. You may have run a little slight temp to be a little bit sore for about a day, but they get over it.
Dr. Green says dog and cat owners who ignore having their pets vaccinated will face a stiff penalty.
Well, there's going to be a cleanup program starting in September after our second clinic. They'll have deputy sheriffs go around calling on different residents, and they have to produce evidence of having had their rabies shot. If they're convicted, they'll have to go ahead and have their shots, pay the regular price, plus there'll be a fine. There can be a $25 to $100 fine on anyone that doesn't have the dog vaccinated. So,
a second rabies clinic is scheduled for September 6th. Dan Black, WSFA TV News. Last Thursday, anti-nuclear protesters jammed a federal courtroom here in Montgomery to attend a hearing on Westinghouse Corporation's plans to build a fuel fabrication plant in Prattville. The NRC hearing was held to decide which complaints from opponents of the plant will be heard during formal commission hearings later to determine if the plant will be licensed. Anti-nuclear protesters say the plant will not be safe for residents. However, Westinghouse officials disagree.
In this type of facility, which is merely producing fuel to be shipped to power plants, there's absolutely no radiation of the type associated with power plants.
It just struck me as incredible that Westinghouse spokesman Frank Cellular could go so far as to say there'd be absolutely no radiation associated with the plant. I mean, it's so incredible because right here in their own environmental report, they go at great lengths to discuss the types of uranium hexafluoride, and other types of uranium that will exist at the plant. They also have a table here setting out the probabilities of various accidents involving radiological effects.
So the Safe Energy Alliance is opposed to the construction of our plant. They're dedicated with opposition to all nuclear power. And such groups, as a normal fashion of operation, are in many cases not informed, okay, make outlandish statements.
It's just either completely naive on his part or bordering on just the worst kind of stupidity, really, for him to say that there's not going to be radiation. I mean, it's as elemental as 2 + 2 = 4. There's going to be tremendous radiation involved with this plant at every step of the way. And that
McPhillips says the Safe Energy Alliance has scheduled a conference with both Westinghouse and NRC attorneys in October. In the meantime, the SEA has been given 30 days to file more contingencies against Westinghouse if new evidence is discovered. Westinghouse officials say plans call for the $60 million plant to begin operation in 1983. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The Cougars lost 19 starters from last year's team, which finished 9-2, losing to Baldwin County in the first round of the 4A playoffs. The offensive and defensive lines were hardest hit by graduation. Parrish hopes the enthusiasm generated by his crop of youngsters will overcome the lack of experience. As Parrish put it, we'll be all right if we don't get the air knocked out of us early. Dothan High School coach Philip Creel considers Northview and Enterprise the teams to beat in Region 3. Parrish says Creel is just giving Northview the old crosstown rival bit by rating the Cougars so high in the region. The Northview coach admits all he is thinking about now is the season opener against Ozark, a team Parrish says can boast one of the finest high school coaches in the state in Paul Terry. Senior quarterback Mike Durden, a 2-year starter, will guide Northview to hopefully another playoff trip. The Cougars' story, though, is youth. They'll start a 9th grade fullback.
Sit down, you're playing, you do it right. That's where you move straight up. Too high, red man. You get outside out, you don't force yourself down there low. Right here. Think you're gonna hit the ground as long as your knees don't. Come on, Danny. Hey, Matheny, all right. Double, Robert, double. You're too high. Come on, if you stay low, she'll get to kill that guy. Look what happened. If I pull both fingers, Danny, you're gonna double.
As our bus pulled up to Paul W. Bryant Hall here in Tuscaloosa, the man himself walked out to greet us. It was a nice touch. He looked fit. He looked like he'd lost a few pounds, but not at all like the rumors we'd heard. He told us his team is behind schedule in its preparation for the Georgia Tech opener, though he seemed unworried about the quarterback situation. Don Jacobs' knee continues to look good. I asked Jacobs how the knee was. He said there was no swelling, that it was fine. though he packs it in ice each night just in case. Bryant seemed very pleased about the progress of his two other quarterbacks, Alan Gray and particularly Ken Coley. He showed us his injury list. It was a long one. He said a couple of those on the list were already out of the Georgia Tech game. He got his biggest laugh when someone asked his reaction to the SEC's losing record to out-of-conference foes last year. Bryant said, "I didn't even know it." This is Phil Snow on the SEC Skywriters Tour on the campus of the University of Alabama. Midway point of the 1980 Skywriters Tour, Nashville, Tennessee. Great for country music, not much for SEC football. The Vanderbilt Commodores have lost 24 straight conference games, but they are perpetually optimistic. A stadium expansion is on the drawing board. Last year's recruiting was much better, very much better according to those around here. Certainly they ranged farther and wider than ever before, looking for the good student who is also a good football player. Coach George McIntyre says his team has nowhere to go but up, and he is looking forward to the trip. Vanderbilt believes the very intelligent player can win. They also believe there's enough of those very intelligent players out there to make Vanderbilt a competitive football team if they'll go and find them. Says McIntyre, it's good to go and talk to a recruit who can talk back to you in English. That's the guy we're looking for. If Vanderbilt can win with the exceptional student, I think college football will be far better off. This is Phil Snow on the Skywriters Tour, Nashville, Tennessee. The opener with Georgia is 13 days away, and Johnny Majors still doesn't know who his starting quarterback will be. He says he'll narrow it down to two players very soon. Not only do the Vols play Georgia first, but Southern Cal comes right behind with Washington State and then Auburn at Auburn. Majors says we have some Barracudas on the schedule this year. It's the toughest I've ever had. Incidentally, the schedule was made 10 years ago with the possible exception of Georgia, which comes on through the SEC's round-robin rule. That opening date with Georgia was the only place Majors and Coach Vince Dooley of Georgia could find to play the game. Majors continued his gloomy assessment, saying, "We'll be better than last year, but we may not win as many games." They won 7 and lost 5 in '79. However, Johnny Majors won't find much sympathy among his fellow coaches. It's well documented how effectively the Vols have recruited the last 3 years. Most believe the only thing that can keep Tennessee from a very good year would be continued problems at quarterback. This is Phil Snow on the SEC Skywriters Tour in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Rayner was among 4 people named to fill top administrative spots at Auburn's main campus, but both Funderburk and Governor James quickly and vehemently deny that any such offer was made to Rayner. Governor James says the only thing he told Dr. Funderburk was to select a man of his choice. The others named include Dr. Harry Philpott's former special assistant, Harold Grant, as Dean of Students, and Stanley Wilson as Vice President over Agriculture. The 4th slot filled went to one of Funderburk's old employees at Auburn's Montgomery campus, Dan Holzenbeck. Holzenbeck served at AUM as Vice President of Development and will begin a new job sometime next month as Auburn's Director of University Relations. Without very much discussion, Auburn's 1980-81 budget was unanimously approved, a budget about 10 to 12% higher than last year. Funderburk says the highest priority was given to faculty salaries, ranging from 6 to 16%. The one section of Auburn University that will feel the biggest pinch from the new budget will be maintenance. Less pruning, less mowing, less building construction. But it's a part of the budget that Dr. Funderburk says will least affect the quality of education. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at Auburn University.
Access to an airplane like they used to.
That's pretty sensitive up there now, Governor.
The governor on the phone one thanked him for you.
Didn't we? What? We kept things going with that.
Projected revenues in Oregon is about 3.
Just the cake, birthday cake from him, and now for me, Bill may take it on it.
You want to paste the
Function of that.
Well, you're doing a good job.
Thank you, sir. We're working hard. I got good people like Jim Solomon.
That's right. Well, any observation? I'm just thinking about my birthday, and I hope I have some more.
Hope you have.
Montgomery's bar continues to upgrade and educate its members and the public, and the American Bar recognized the effort with the award. Bar officers Walter Byers and Tommy Lawson say more public service projects are being planned.
The American advocacy system is under attack, and the only way we can get around this attack is education of the public as well as lawyers. And in this regard, we need more programs for the education of the public and continue our legal education for the lawyers into the future. This is the only way we can preserve what we think is the best legal system in the world.
The National Bar's recognition of Montgomery's lawyers is one of the steps the legal profession is using to help educate the public to the operation of the legal system and to help erase fears many people have when they come in contact with that legal system. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse.
Commission Chairman Mac McKinney says the consultants will work with the architectural firm of Pearson, Humphreys, and Jones and Associates. The firm was recently named by the commission to draw modification plans for the courthouse and jail. The consultants, one from Chicago and one from New York, are to meet with the commission, judges, and courthouse personnel to finalize anticipated growth plans. Bob Smith, chief clerk from the Office of Probate, requested and received permission from the commission to hire 19 temporary employees for the upcoming auto tag buying season. Smith reminded the commission that the county will have a regular tag buying season this fall. He says staggered buying of tags begins in January. At that time, tag buyers with last names beginning with A and B will buy tags after paying for new ones on a prorated basis in October-November. The West Montgomery Coalition Community Club and citizens of Hayneville Road said they want corrective action on inadequate drainage ditches and paving in their communities. The commission says it wants the repairs to Bell Road at Brubaker School by a railroad to be done after school hours or on weekends. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
You have a copy of
Montgomery County Probate Judge Walker Hobby requested Attorney General Graddick's advisory opinion last Thursday following a complaint by U.S. Senate candidate Finus St. John. Graddick says his opinion deals only with the Montgomery County Democratic primary, but could also apply to the Democratic ballots in most other counties.
There are two specific code sections, one primarily dealing with the position of the candidates on the ballot. Alabama law states that where space permits, the candidates should be lined in one column. The ballots here in Montgomery County and possibly other counties were printed in what I feel is a violation of the law. Also, in the United States Senate race in the Democratic primary, State Senator Finus St. John was printed in the 4th position. Our authorities have shown that where there is an abbreviated name, it should be placed on the ballot as if it was spelled out.
Graddick says it will be up to the probate judges to determine whether new ballots will be printed for the September 2nd primary election. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Alabama law states that where space permits, the candidates should be lined in one column. The ballots here in Montgomery County and possibly other counties were printed in what I feel is a violation of the law.
Kentucky coach Fran Kersey is a realist. He knows how difficult it is to win consistently in the Southeastern Conference, with, of course, that one exception. So he strives to build his teams, peaking every 4 years or so. He had conference-tying teams in 1976 and 77, and right now the plan is to be ready again in 81 or 82. The Kentucky roster shows only 10 seniors and 6 juniors. The 70-odd scholarship players remaining are sophomores and freshmen. That's partly because 10 freshmen were held out 2 years ago. They are now redshirt sophomores. So Kersey plans to build his personnel for 81 and 82. He says the Cats won't challenge in 1980. In fact, he says they may be the number 10 team in the conference. This is Phil Snow on the SEC Skywriters Tour in Lexington, Kentucky. Doug Barfield fielded questions from the Skywriters tonight. Naturally, question number 1 was about NCAA probation. He said it is and has been a concern. He said it's no fun for his players to sit home on Christmas watching teams they believe they can beat. The writers wanted to know if James Brooks is a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate. Yes, he said, but his chances depend on us having a good year. No one except Paul Hornung has won a Heisman on a losing team. Asked who the defensive coordinator was for Auburn. Barfield pointed to himself and said, "You're looking at him." Quoting, "All 4 of our defensive assistants have been defensive coordinators at one time or another. We're going to work at it as a group. There's nothing that says you have to have a defensive coordinator. Many teams don't." Several players came in for interviews after the Barfield session. Naturally, James Brooks drew the largest crowd. This is Phil Snow on the SEC Skywriters Tour in Auburn, Alabama.
system, 11.7%. 1960 through 1979, it's 11.1%. Combination scale, and you can use it to estimate what future salaries might be.
Well, up on the parachute, what we've done is installed outer pockets around the canopy, and we refer to them as piods. They're they are pockets trapping air, pulling the canopy open from the skirt to the apex of the canopy. It will enable a military jumper to make a much lower jump than he normally at the present time has the capabilities of doing.
I think the reason we have to use such a higher altitude now is to enable an individual to have adequate time to